All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on something pretty fundamental, aesthetic value.
Yeah.
What makes things beautiful? And why should we even care?
Mm-hmm.
You sent over this excerpt from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Yeah.
The entry on the concept of the aesthetic.
Right.
So we're going to try to unpack that together.
Sounds good.
It might seem a little intimidating, all this philosophy stuff.
Yeah.
But trust me, this is actually relevant to how we experience the world every day. I'm really excited to dig in, see what we find.
I think it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You know, aesthetics are so deeply ingrained in our lives.
Yeah.
I think you'll be surprised, actually,
Yeah.
by how much these centuries-old debates connect to your own everyday judgments.
The entry starts off talking about taste, which I have to say feels very old-fashioned.
It does.
Like something out of a Jane Austen novel.
It does. It does sound a little fusty. But taste was a really hot topic back in the 18th century.
Okay.
Think of it almost as a sixth sense, specifically for detecting beauty.
Ah, okay.
So just like some people have, a really keen sense of smell or perfect pitch.
Yeah, yes.
Some were considered to have superior taste.
So you could be like a taste maker.
Exactly.
For art or music, kind of like today's influencers, but for the powdered wig crowd.
Exactly. Yeah. And there were some pretty intense debates back then.
Yeah.
About whether taste was based on reason and objective principles, or if it was all about gut feelings and just immediate reactions.
Interesting.
Like today, we argue,
right.
whether there are these universal standards of beauty or if it's all subjective.
The entry even gives this example of judging a ragu, like a stew, versus a poem. Is experiencing beauty really that instant?
Right.
Like you taste a delicious stew, you just know right away.
If it's good or not.
That's what the immediacy thesis argues.
Okay.
That beauty just hits you.
Yeah.
No need to overthink it.
Gotcha.
But of course, not everyone agreed.
Right.
Even back then, people recognized that some works of art take time to appreciate.
Yeah, I can't imagine just glancing at a Picasso and being like, oh, I get it.
Right. Exactly.
There's layers there.
Philosophers like Hume, they acknowledged that, we might use our intellect to analyze a work, but that final judgment about its beauty was still seen as this immediate feeling.
Okay.
So you might study like the composition, the brushstrokes of a painting.
Yeah.
But ultimately, whether you find it beautiful comes down to that gut reaction.
It's like that saying, I don't know much about art, but I know what I like.
Exactly. Exactly. But then Kant comes along.
Okay.
And shifts the whole conversation with his idea of disinterest. Okay, I love a good plot twist.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
For Kant, true aesthetic judgment wasn't about, your personal desires.
Okay.
Or whether something was useful.
Okay.
Imagine you're judging, like, a cake in a baking competition.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about how much you want to eat it, are you?
No.
You're focusing on the skill, the artistry.
Right. Yeah.
Involved.
So it's like you're taking yourself out of the equation.
Yeah.
You're appreciating the object for its own sake.
Exactly.
Not for what it can do for you.
Exactly. And that's where we start to see how the aesthetic becomes different from, just liking something.
Yeah.
Or finding it useful.
Okay.
It's a different level of appreciation.
This makes me rethink all the times I've called something beautiful.
Yeah.
Was I truly judging it aesthetically?
Right.
Or was I just thinking, oh, I want that pair of shoes?
Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah.
To ask yourself, it makes you kind of re-examine
your
reactions.
Totally. Yeah.
In a new light.
It does. And it leads us to another question, I think. Are there certain things that are just inherently aesthetic?
Right.
Are there certain objects that are like naturally beautiful?
That's where the debate over formalism comes in.
Okay.
And this is the idea that aesthetic value comes from an object's form.
Okay.
So the shape, the color, the texture, the sound.
Okay, so purely what you can perceive with your senses?
Yes.
Like a sculpture's beauty comes from how it's carved, not the story it might tell.
Yeah, exactly. Think of art critics like Hanslick and Bell.
Okay.
They were champions of formalism. Hanslick argued that music, was all about tonally moving forms.
Okay.
Whereas Bell believed that painting was all about relations and combinations of lines and colors.
Interesting.
Yeah, and their ideas were very influential on art movements.
I bet.
Of their time.
That makes sense for visual arts.
Oh.
Like painting and sculpture.
Right.
But what about books, movies? Those aren't just shapes and colors.
Right.
They have plots, characters, ideas.
Yeah, you've hit on one of the main challenges to formalism.
Have I?
And philosophers have grappled with this.
Of course, of course.
Danto, for instance,
Yeah.
pointed to Andy Warhol's Brillo boxes.
Oh, yeah, those are such a great example.
Yeah.
Because they're literally just replicas of supermarket boxes.
Right.
But when you see them in a museum, it's completely different.
Exactly. Danto argued that if you saw a Brillo box, in a gallery
Yeah.
versus in a grocery store, the context
Yeah.
totally changes how you see it.
It does, yeah.
So it can't just be about the object's physical form.
Right.
Our knowledge about it plays a role, too.
So even if something's like visually striking, our understanding of what it is and where we see it, that shapes the experience.
It does. And Walden makes a similar point. He argues that even with something like Picasso's Guernica, how you categorize it changes the aesthetic experience.
Oh, wow.
Do you see it as painting?
Yeah.
Or a 3D object?
Yeah, wow.
Or a historical artifact?
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Good.
It's like we're adding layers of interpretation on top of the object itself.
Yeah.
It's not just about the thing, it's how we engage with it.
Exactly.
Mentally.
And that takes us to another fundamental question.
Yeah.
How do we judge aesthetic value?
Ooh.
If it's not just about the object, are there any guidelines?
Right.
Or is it purely subjective?
So are there like universal rules of beauty?
Right.
Or is it all in the eye of the beholder? I need to know. I have to know.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Okay, welcome back to our aesthetic value deep dive. You sent some really thought-provoking material.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
My brain is already doing gymnastics trying to wrap itself around all these ideas.
It is a fascinating topic.
It is, yeah.
And we've already started to see how much more there is to it.
Totally.
Than just saying, I like this.
Right.
Or,
that's pretty.
Right, exactly. So we've established that it's not just about the object's form, but also the context we see it in.
Yeah.
And our own knowledge about it.
Right.
But how do we actually judge aesthetic value?
Yeah. That is the question.
Is it purely subjective? Is it just a free-for-all?
Yeah.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Or are there some guidelines? Like, what's going on?
Well, you've got the particularists on one side saying it's all case by case, no rules apply.
Okay.
And then you've got the generalists saying there are some principles.
Okay, so two camps.
Yeah.
The entry mentions Eisenberg.
Yeah.
He seems to be firmly in the particularist camp.
Yeah, he is. Like waving the anything goes flag.
He argues that you can't just, list a bunch of features and say that if they're present, it makes something good.
Right.
You can't just say, okay, this painting has vibrant colors and strong lines and good balance.
Right.
Therefore, it's a masterpiece.
Right. There's no formula.
No.
He makes this interesting point about art critics.
Yeah.
That they're more like guides.
Right.
Giving us directions for perceiving. Rather than like hard and fast rules.
Exactly. They're not dictators of taste.
Right.
They're helping you see what they see.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. But then you've got Sibley.
Okay.
Who kind of muddies the waters a little bit.
I was going to say, I'm sensing a but coming.
Well, Sibley agrees that, using terms like balanced might be a matter of taste.
Okay.
But he thinks that some terms are just inherently positive.
Okay.
So, like, if something is genuinely funny, he says there's some objective quality there.
Okay.
Regardless of individual preferences.
So there's maybe like a middle ground.
Yeah.
Not pure subjectivity, but not like rigid rules either.
Exactly. It's a spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah. Some aspects of aesthetic judgment are more subjective.
Yeah.
Like whether you prefer, impressionism over abstract.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But other aspects like whether a joke lands or a melody is catchy, that might have more to do with objective qualities.
Okay.
That, to some extent, we can agree on.
This is making me think about all those times when I've tried to convince, like, my friends.
Right.
Why a band is amazing. Or why they have to see this movie.
Yeah.
We're not just throwing opinions around. We're trying to get them to, like, see what we see, experience it in the same way.
It's like you're sharing a secret. You found something beautiful, and you want to share it.
Yeah.
You want other people to experience it.
Totally. Yeah. And that brings us to the next part of the entry, which is this idea of the aesthetic attitude.
Right.
Is there a special way we have to approach things, to experience them aesthetically? Like, do I need to wear a beret and stroke my chin thoughtfully?
Maybe not the beret.
Okay.
But the idea of an aesthetic attitude is that, there is a way of engaging with an object that lets us experience it on this aesthetic level.
So it's not just about the object. It's about how we mentally approach it.
Exactly. Remember Kant's idea of disinterest?
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of building on that, focusing on that mental state of the observer.
So I have to mentally step back from the object, see it on its own terms, not just in relation to my needs and desires.
Yeah. Try to clear your mind of distractions, preconceived notions,
Which?
practical concerns.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're looking at a sculpture, you're not thinking, I wonder how much that weighs.
Right.
Or that would look nice on my mantelpiece.
Right.
You're just absorbing its form, the textures, the way the light plays on it.
Like being totally absorbed in a movie or a book.
Exactly.
Where you forget about everything else.
Yeah.
Just get lost.
Those moments of pure immersion.
Yeah.
Where you're totally present with the object.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
Those are often seen as examples of that aesthetic attitude.
The entry mentions Schopenhauer. Didn't he believe aesthetic contemplation was a way to, escape suffering?
He did.
Yeah.
He thought the world was full of striving.
Yeah.
Dissatisfaction.
Right.
But that in those moments of pure aesthetic attention, we find a brief respite from that struggle.
Interesting.
It's like reaching a state of peace.
Yeah.
Through art.
It makes me think about, mindfulness.
Right.
And meditation.
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with information, demands on our attention.
Yeah.
But just taking the time to really focus on something beautiful, whether it's a painting, a piece of music, even a sunset, it can be such a relief.
Yeah, that's a great connection.
Yeah.
Stolnitz, actually, another philosopher mentioned in the entry, kind of expands on this idea.
Okay.
He argues that the aesthetic attitude is about attending to an object, not just disinterestedly, but also sympathetically.
Sympathetically. So it's not about being cold and detached.
Right.
It's about being open, receptive to the work.
Yeah, trying to understand the object.
Yeah.
On its own terms.
Okay.
Letting it guide your experience.
Right.
Rather than trying to impose your own agenda on it.
Okay.
If you're listening to a piece of music,
yeah,
you're not trying to force it.
Yeah.
To fit your mood.
Right.
Or your expectations.
You're letting the music kind of wash over you.
Yeah.
Take you where it wants to go.
Yeah, I love that. Letting the work speak for itself. There's also this intriguing concept of psychical distance from Billow. I'm picturing myself standing far away from a painting, squinting thoughtfully.
It's not about physical distance.
Okay.
It's about finding the right balance between being emotionally engaged but not overwhelmed by the work.
Okay.
So you're appreciating the beauty of a tragic play.
Yeah.
Without, dissolving into a puddle of tears.
Right. You're able to appreciate it.
Right.
Without, getting so caught up in it.
Yeah.
That you miss the point.
It's a delicate balance.
It is, yeah.
You're allowing yourself to feel the emotions, but you're recognizing
that they're part of the work's intended effect.
This makes me wonder if some people are just, naturally better at achieving this psychical distance than others.
That's a great question, and it's one that, philosophers are still debating.
Right.
But not everyone even buys into this
whole
aesthetic attitude idea.
Oh, no. Our carefully constructed aesthetic attitude is about to crumble.
Well, let's see.
Okay.
Dickey, for instance.
Yeah.
He argues that a lot of what we call aesthetic attention is actually just inattention.
Okay.
If you're at a concert, but you're, texting your friend.
Right.
You're not really experiencing the music aesthetically.
Right, you're not present.
Yeah.
He uses the example of the jealous husband in Othello.
Right.
Who's so busy suspecting his wife, he misses the whole point of the play.
Right. Classic example.
Yeah.
And it highlights that, we can't just assume a certain mental state.
Right.
Guarantees an aesthetic experience.
Right, yeah.
You have to be engaged with the work.
Right, yeah.
Otherwise, it's just background noise.
But isn't that jealous husband still paying attention just to the, wrong things?
That is an interesting point.
Yeah.
It raises the question of, what is true engagement?
Right, yeah.
Are you present?
Yeah.
Are you receptive to the work?
Yeah.
Or are you just letting your own thoughts and biases take over?
So maybe the aesthetic attitude is not like a single fixed state, but more of a spectrum.
Yeah, there are degrees of engagement.
Right.
And we kind of shift along that spectrum.
Yeah.
Depending on the work.
Right.
And our own mental state.
I like that. It reminds us that it's an active process.
Yeah.
It's not something passive. It requires effort.
It does.
Attention.
Yeah. And that leads us finally to the big question.
Hit me.
Why do we care about aesthetics at all?
Yes. We've been circling around this idea of aesthetic value.
Yeah.
But what is it?
Yeah.
Is it just a fancy way of saying pleasure? Or is there something more?
Well, the dominant theory for a long time has been aesthetic hedonism.
Anism. So it all boils down to feeling good.
Well, on the surface, yeah.
Tell me more. All right, we're back. Final part of our aesthetic value deep dive.
Yeah.
And we're about to get into some controversial territory here.
We are.
Get those thinking caps on.
So we left off with this idea of aesthetic hedonism.
Yeah, basically beauty equals pleasure.
Yeah, the value of beauty boils down to the pleasure it gives us. But as you pointed out, there's more to it.
Yeah, I'm still kind of chewing on this idea that aesthetic value might be about something more than just feeling good.
Right.
What are these anti-hedonist theories all about? They sound pretty rebellious.
It's like they're staging a philosophical coup.
Yeah.
And for a long time, hedonism was the reigning theory. It just makes sense, right? We enjoy beautiful things.
Right.
But anti-hedonists aren't saying that pleasure is irrelevant.
Okay.
They're just saying that it's not the root of aesthetic value.
So it's like a chicken or the egg problem. Which comes first?
Oh, exactly.
The value or the enjoyment?
Yeah. The anti-hedonists think the value is already there, inherent in the object. And pleasure is just the result of recognizing that value.
So it's like the difference between a catchy pop song versus a symphony.
Right.
The pop song, you get an immediate rush
Yeah.
of pleasure. But the symphony, with its complexity and depth, it offers a different kind of reward.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're flipping the script. What are some of their arguments? Give me some ammunition for my next philosophical debate.
One of the most compelling arguments comes from Susan Wolf.
Okay.
She uses the example of Middlemarch versus the Da Vinci Code.
The ultimate literary showdown.
Right.
Okay.
Wolf points out that the Da Vinci Code might be, a more popular read, maybe even a more pleasurable read for many.
Right.
But most literary critics would agree Middlemarch is the superior work.
Okay.
It's not just about enjoyment. It's about, the depth, the insight, the craft.
So just because something's enjoyable doesn't mean it's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that directly challenges
Yeah.
the hedonist's idea of the epistemic qualification.
Okay. Remind me what that is again.
So it's the idea that we might misjudge a work's value because we're not experiencing it correctly.
Right.
So a truly informed reader, someone who understands all the nuances, they would supposedly get the most pleasure from it.
Right.
But Wolf's point is that even the well-informed writer isn't just experiencing pleasure.
Right.
They're recognizing these inherent qualities that make something great, like the way George Eliot in Middlemarch weaves together these complex characters and social commentary.
So they're attuned to the novel's structure.
Yeah, the prose, the insights.
Yeah, it's those things that make it valuable.
Yeah.
Not just the pleasure.
Exactly.
This makes me think about those times when you're really moved by something.
Yeah.
You just kind of know, on a gut level.
Yeah.
This is something special. It's not just that I like it.
Right.
But it's I don't know, a sense of awe or recognition, you're connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, there's this sense of resonance, the work is speaking to you.
Yeah.
And that seems to go beyond just pleasure.
It does. So if not pleasure, then what are your driving aesthetic value? What are these anti-hedonists proposing?
Well, one really interesting theory comes from Dominic Lopes.
Okay.
He argues that we can't just focus on the individual's experience.
Okay.
We have to look at the broader context of social practices.
Okay, I like where this is going.
His network theory suggests that aesthetic value is tied to successful action within a practice. So whether you're creating art, appreciating it, conserving it, even just discussing it, the value comes from doing those things well, according to the standards of that practice.
So it's not about the feeling you get.
Yeah.
It's about being part of this community.
Yeah.
And contributing to this shared understanding of, what's good and valuable.
Yeah. It's like being part of a conversation that's been going on for centuries.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty radical shift.
It is.
From the individualistic focus on pleasure.
It really is. And it opens up a whole new way of thinking about aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's not just passive contemplation. It's it's active engagement.
Yeah.
Participation.
Yeah.
Even responsibility.
And then the entry mentions the Auburn view.
Right, which sounds even more mind-bending.
Yeah, it does.
This view argues that aesthetic value is about perceiving something as worthy of appreciation right then and there.
Okay.
It's self-reflexive, meaning that the act of recognizing the value is part of what makes it valuable.
Whoa, that's a lot. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of appreciation.
It is, in a way. Imagine a painting in a museum. You see it. Something about it draws you in. You stop. You look closer and you think, this is worth my attention.
Yeah.
This is beautiful. That feeling, that judgment of worthiness is part of the aesthetic experience itself.
So it's not just that the painting has some inherent quality. It's that you're actively recognizing and affirming it.
Exactly.
It's like when you hear a song for the first time and it just stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
It's not just that the music is objectively good.
Right.
It's that it grabs you and demands your attention.
Exactly. That's the power of the Auburn view.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the active role that we play in shaping those experiences.
Right.
It's not just passively receiving beauty.
It's about engaging with it.
Yeah, and making that judgment of value.
So where does this all leave us?
Yeah.
We started with this 18th century concept of taste.
Right.
And we've gone all the way to these mind-blowing anti-hedonist theories.
We have.
And they're totally reshaping how we think about beauty.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I think the key takeaway here is that there's no single definitive answer to the question of aesthetic value.
Right.
It's complex.
Yeah.
It involves our senses, our emotions, our intellect, even our social and cultural contexts.
So maybe the real value in all this isn't about finding the right answer.
Yeah.
But it's just expanding our understanding of how we experience and value the world.
Absolutely. Next time you encounter something beautiful, whether it's a work of art or a sunset or even, a perfectly crafted sentence, take a moment. Really pay attention.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what's drawing me in? Is it just a surface level pleasure or is it something deeper?
That is such a great point. And on that note, I want to thank you and you, dear listener, for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Into the fascinating world of aesthetic value. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and we encourage you to keep exploring and asking questions.